Hi there, I'm Nora Dunn, and I'm otherwise known as the Professional Hobo. Now, something you may or may not know about me is that I saved over $100,000 getting free accommodation in my first 10 years of traveling the world full time. And before you get an image in your head of me staying in a cardboard shack at the side of the road, I assure you I was living in some of the most beautiful places you can imagine, multi-million-dollar mansions, 300-hectare properties, and more often than not in countries with a very high cost of living. And I was doing it all for free. Not only that, but it was a really amazing, culturally immersive experience. I got to meet people and do things I never would have had a chance to do, and people I never would have had a chance to meet had I been on the regular traveler's trail. So I was recently doing an interview with a woman named Anastasia Lind, and she is a language coach, she's an author and a speaker, and you can find her at anastasialind.com. I will leave a link to her website in the show notes or description. And she was hosting a virtual summit that was inspiring women to travel. And she had me on initially to discuss financially sustainable travel. But we very quickly dove down the rabbit hole of free accommodation, which happens a lot because it's an interesting topic and not a lot of people know about the 5 different forms of free accommodation that are available and how to incorporate those elements of a lifestyle into a remote work and travel lifestyle. So we basically took a left turn in our interview and spoke about how to get free accommodation around the world. And Anastasia has been kind enough to allow me to repost the interview here so you can learn a little bit about how to get free accommodation around the world as well. Now, of course, I did write a book about this as well. If you want to level up and you want to learn where to find the opportunities, how to set yourself apart, and how to make sure that you're going to stay safe and have a good time and be able to work remotely concurrent to all that, then definitely check out my book. It's called How to Get Free Accommodation Around the World. I know, original. And you'll find a link to that in the show notes or description as well. So without further ado, please enjoy this interview.
Nora Dunn is here. Hi, Nora.
Hey, Anastasia. Nice to be here.
Hi, great to have you here. And I invited Nora to talk about financially sustainable traveling. And we would love to dig deep into that. But first, would you please tell us a little bit what you do and what does your lifestyle look like?
All right, sounds like a plan. My alter ego is the Professional Hobo. And my online home, of course, is theprofessionalhobo.com. I have been traveling full-time and or long-term as a digital nomad since 2006. So I actually started calling myself the Professional Hobo as a joke because, I just thought it would be funny to be professionally homeless, but it stuck. And little did I know in 2006 that there would be an entire industry coming up around it and that lifestyle travel would become a bigger and bigger thing. And now I think we're just on the leading edge of now a huge wave of lifestyle travel that's been enabled by the pandemic and so many people now being able to work remotely. So I've been coaching people and writing informative and instructional articles on my website for 15 years on how to travel and work remotely. And I'm a former financial planner, so I, of course, have to add the finance to it. And that is how we stumbled into financially sustainable travel. It's a term I quite inadvertently ended up coining, but it's really all about how to travel long-term or full-time in a financially sustainable way.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk more about that. But first, would you please tell us a little bit more how your lifestyle looks like? What do you do every day? And do you have a dog, right?
Well, I'm staying in a household with a dog right now who may or may not make an appearance. And yeah, this is one of the interesting parts of the full-time travel lifestyle. When you travel full-time or long-term, you will be staying in a variety of different environments, as I have. I've lived in and or traveled through over 65 countries in the last 15 years, which actually is not that many if you think about 15 years of being on the road. But my style of travel has always been more organic and it's been very slow. And part of the reason I travel slowly is because the reason that I wanted to travel as a lifestyle was because I was really interested in delving deep into the culture and really feeling like I had a sense that I was living there and being able to make friends and understand how people operate and live and what they think about and how they cook and where they shop. And I could only achieve that if I had the opportunity to live in a place for a while. So along the way, I've had lots of home bases. I was in Australia on and off for 18 months, New Zealand on and off for 9 months, the Caribbean island of Grenada on and off for 2 years, Peru for 2 years, Ecuador for 9 months. Those are probably the longest places I've stayed anywhere. And I always use them as bases for travel as well. And then, of course, I definitely had many itinerant nomadic years where I just moved and moved and moved and kept moving. And that's fun as well. The beauty of this lifestyle is you really get to design it to be exactly what you want to be. If you want to travel fast, if you want to travel slow, if you want to travel expensively or inexpensively. In my initial years of developing my online business, of course, my income was not really all that great. So I actually found a way, and again, this plays into financially sustainable travel. I found a way to get free accommodation. Actually, I found 5 different ways to get free accommodation.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
I saved over $100,000 on accommodation in
Oh
my
my
first
God.
10 years of being on the road. So that is one of many little tips and tricks that I have in order to make the lifestyle sustainable. And just in case, I'm going to debunk the idea, just in case somebody thinks that free accommodation means living in a cardboard shack on the side of the road. I'd just like to say that I have actually, through my free accommodation opportunities, not only had amazing culturally immersive experiences, but I've stayed in places that were considerably more expensive than I ever would have been able to afford on my own. So it unto itself, it can be a great lifestyle and a great way to travel and experience the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It tells us that there are so many opportunities out there, and you can create like literally whatever you want. Just focus on the opportunities and focus on what you want to create rather than focusing on the limitations. Can you give us some examples of those free accommodations that you found? Like, what was your most interesting experience?
Yeah, well, I think I had a lot of really interesting experiences, but the first form of free accommodation that I discovered, and I discovered it quite accidentally, is volunteering, also known as work exchange. And I've done some really crazy things in exchange for free accommodation, everything from milking goats to leading eco treks on llamas, to designing business plans, to painting murals, to cleaning, chopping firewood. And so that was a really interesting way to have a very immersive travel experience, like I said, and also to be immediately plugged into a community, a place to stay. Usually there are other travelers there as well, and you're staying with locals. So it's a really amazing experience in terms of being able to do all kinds of really crazy things and get a free place to stay in countries that otherwise might be cost prohibitive if you wanted to pay for accommodation on your own. Because I did these in places like Hawaii and Australia and New Zealand, and places that would generally be expensive if I were paying for it on my own dime. So that was really cool. But because I was also concurrently building an online business and working remotely, I found eventually that it became very difficult to balance the hours required to volunteer or work in exchange for accommodation, plus the hours to work online. So it became a bit of a balancing act, and I started to feel like I had traded one rat race in for another. So the next form of free accommodation I found, and one that I really think is excellent for lifestyle travelers, was house sitting. And this is great because basically you get to all the comforts of home. It's just somebody else's home, and you're taking care of the home, often the pets, checking the mail, watering the plants, doing whatever the homeowner needs you to do in their absence while they travel. And house sitting gigs can last for anything from a few days to a few months to even a few years. So that was a really rewarding way for me to experience. Again, I had this slice of local life. I'm living in literally a local home in an interesting community around the world. So I did that in probably 15 different countries and had some amazing experiences that way. And I think that that's probably the form of free accommodation that is most suited to digital nomads and remote workers. But there are 3, like I said, there's 3 other forms of free accommodation.
I just have a quick question. Do you write somewhere in detail how you can find this type of home sitting accommodation?
Oh, yes, of course I do.
Or if you have any course around that?
I actually wrote a book called How to Get Free Accommodation Around the World, and you can find that on my website. It goes into, there are dozens of different websites that you can use to find house sitting and volunteer gigs and living on boats and hospitality exchanges and home exchanges. Those are the 5 forms of free accommodation. And there are dozens of websites to find that, give you opportunities in each of these 5 modalities of free accommodation. So in my book, I go into where and how you can find these gigs, how you can make yourself attractive and basically ultimately get the gig, and the sort of due diligence that you'll want to do to make sure that you're staying safe and that you end up having a really good travel experience, because not all free accommodation opportunities are created equal.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to put the link to your website right under the interview, so it's easy to access this. And I really recommend it to go and get this book. I'm gonna get it myself as well.
Thank you.
Great. So what's the third way?
So the third way that I experienced was living on boats. And this was really unique. I discovered this when I was house sitting in Grenada, which is a Caribbean island. And I had, when people hang out at the yacht clubs, that's usually where the things are going on. Various yacht clubs at different days of the week have different events going on. And I found myself befriending people who own boats. And suddenly I found myself immersing into this, it's a whole world of nautical travel. And you can volunteer to be on a boat and to help out in whatever way that the captain needs you to help out, whether it be while they're docked and doing, general maintenance work, or whether it's while they're traveling from one location to another. So you're getting free passage as well as free accommodation on the boat, or even helping out a captain who might be doing a charter. So they've got guests on the boat and they're going around from island to island and need your help with the logistics. So in some cases, these are free gigs. In some cases, you get paid. But also, I think it's important to note that in some cases also, the costs of living on and running a boat are very expensive. So sometimes you might actually be required to pay, but what you're really doing is just paying for your share of the expenses, the water, the fuel, and the food. But I'm happy to say that I lived on boats for over 2 months, not a night on land, on 5 different boats spanning 3 countries in the Caribbean. So once you get one of these gigs, it's very easy to move from boat to boat because it's a very tight-knit community. So that was a really unique way for me to travel and get free accommodation.
Yeah, that's awesome. So exciting. How did it feel to live in a boat for 2 months?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Ironically, one of the reasons why I chose to do this is not only do I not know how to sail, which I don't recommend, but I also had a bit of an ocean phobia. And part of my reason that I wanted to do this is I wanted to see if I could kick this ocean phobia and also this terrible propensity for seasickness. So I'm pleased to say I think I kicked the seasickness, or at least partially kicked it, on a 14-hour sail from St. Martin to the BVI's. That was less than smooth. And I don't know if I really kicked my ocean phobia, but I certainly got more used to living on boats, and it's a very unique way to live. Certainly because for 12 years I traveled full time, everything that I owned fit into a bag. So I certainly got used to living in small spaces and living a minimalist lifestyle. So being on boats certainly fits hand in hand with that minimalist lifestyle.
Yes. So what I'm hearing is that you were not comfortable with that at the beginning, and you knew that it would be challenging, but you did that anyway. And what was the outcome on the other side when you have done it?
Well, I'm always a sucker for a good challenge. I mean, I think that pretty much everything I do in life is all about conquering fears. And I'm also a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I enjoy facing those fears and jumping off the cliffs or out of the airplanes or doing whatever crazy thing that might give me those butterflies to think about, but then ultimately to take that plunge. So certainly at the end of this experience of living on boats, it was really just a very fulfilling experience. I would do it again. I will say again, though, when you're working remotely, internet connections on boats, they come and go. It all depends on the boat and where it's moored and what kind of equipment they have on hand as to how good an internet connection you can have. I certainly learned a little bit about sailing, which was amazing. And I learned a little bit about living sustainably and in a small space, because many boats are outfitted so that they can be completely off the grid. And I had in all of my travels too, I've had a few experiences in living in places that are environmentally sustainable or off the grid. So just that alone really changes. Like, there's a sustainable element to, when you're used to having to ration water, when you're used to, I lived on a permaculture property in Hawaii where all of my water, I had to walk to get the water. I had to hand filter the water and bring it back. Once you really get used to understanding what you consume, water, power, understanding exactly how many hours the sun has to shine or the wind has to blow in order to generate enough power to charge up my computer, So these were really interesting skills that I learned in the permaculture property on Hawaii, and then really learned again, or really leveled up living on boats as well. So it's a really interesting way to live very close to nature. And the water, the water rules. It will make or break your trip. So you really live, captains and live by the weather forecasts and the water and the winds, because that is really what powers or disempowers your journey.
Yeah, so that sounds like a really unique experience. You just experience the world in a new way. You will not be able to experience that if you work from your office.
Totally,
something completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So now we have only way number 5 left.
Yes, so 4 and 5. So the first was volunteering, house sitting, living on boats. The fourth one is hospitality exchanges.
Right.
And another word for this, of course, is couchsurfing, but couchsurfing is just one of a few different ways to experience a hospitality exchange, which is ultimately just staying with a local for a few days. And it's a fabulous experience for both parties, right? The traveler has a free place to stay on a couch or in a spare room, and the host has the opportunity to get to know travelers. So it's a fabulous cultural exchange. It's I've really enjoyed all of my hospitality exchange experiences. But I will throw a caveat in there, and it is that a good house guest is a little bit like fresh produce. They go off after a few days. And that is to mean you would never assume that a hospitality exchange experience, it's like, hey, I'm going to crash on your couch for 2 months. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen, right? You expect it to be a few days. There may be an invitation later on to come back or stay for a longer period of time, but you would never assume that. And as a digital nomad, planning your stays a few days at a time is not sustainable. It is very difficult to do that. And because it takes a lot of work to even just make the personal connection with someone to stay that one day. And then also too, hospitality exchanges are really about that cultural exchange. So a host is not necessarily going to like or even understand if you have to spend 7-8 hours a day on your computer while you're staying with them. It's a little bit antisocial. So yeah. I will use hospitality exchanges maybe as I'm arriving to or leaving from a destination, and I'm able to unplug from my work for a few days and have that cultural exchange and do it that way. And the final form of free accommodation, and this is the one that I haven't tried, but I know all about it, is home exchanges. And that is similar to house sitting in that you will stay in somebody else's home for free. Sometimes there are some, they want you to water the plants or something. Not usually are there pets involved, but there can be. But then also too, you have a home that travelers can stay in while you are not there. So it's almost like you're using your home as equity to be able to earn the credits to stay in other people's homes. And at first blush, that might seem really complicated. Like, how am I going to find somebody in a place in the world that I want to stay at the exact same time that they want to come to my place? It's not that complicated. The house sitting websites have figured out how to be able to create things like 3-way exchanges or credit-based exchanges that make it quite easy. And I actually recently spoke to a digital nomad family of 5, and they've been traveling full-time for 8 years, I think. And they've been largely doing it through home exchanges. So they've had people stay in their home while they've been gone, and that has given them the opportunity to stay in homes around the world. And it's really worked out quite well for them.
Wow, this is fantastic. So there are 5 ways to stay in a different country and not pay anything for that, and also get all those rich experiences and interactions with locals. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And accommodation is categorically the most expensive element of lifestyle travel. So if you can save money on accommodation, you will immediately be lowering your cost to live on the road.
Yeah, and on that way, you don't have to worry about being lonely because you will have people to interact with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Like I'm going to get your book. Like, I'm so inspired. And my next question is, how safe is that to do all those things, especially as a woman?
That's a fabulous question, and I'm glad you asked that. One of the things that, of course, is very important when you're looking at doing any of these gigs is doing your due diligence. And there's a few steps that you might want to take. Now, I've been very lucky. I've found very traveler-friendly opportunities, and in many ways, actually, some of the places I've gone, for example, some of the volunteer gigs I did had other travelers who were there as well. So, as a solo female traveler, it was a fabulous experience, not only to meet people along the way, but also to feel safe in this more shared environment. But I do know people who have solo female travelers who have had less than good experiences with volunteering, with work exchange, where they found themselves staying very remotely. They're the only volunteer, and the host maybe was not all that, they were not comfortable, let's just say, with the host and how the host behaved. So there are definitely some things that you can do in order to ensure that the gig that you're about to go to is going to work out well for you. Not the least of which is do a video call with your host. Get them to give you a tour of the place. That's quite important with house sitting. I dodged a few bullets getting a video tour of a place that was not going to be a place that I would be comfortable with. But also too, just having that conversation, having the communication with your host. You can learn a lot. And certainly I always advise that travelers listen to I call it their spidey sense. Listen to your instinct. If you've got a little voice in the back of your head saying, this might not be good, listen, better safe than sorry. So definitely it is important to make sure that you're feeling safe and to not intentionally put yourself in a situation that would be difficult to get out of. Now, I will say that when it comes to work exchange in particular, there is a website that probably is my favorite website, and I do speak about it. I write about it in my book, and I have a discount for it as well. It's called World Packers. And there's a number of reasons I like World Packers. You can filter your searches for social impact and environmentally friendly, like eco opportunities, if that's your jam, which can be very nice to know that you're making a positive difference while you're volunteering and trade for free accommodation. But also they have an interesting kind of insurance option whereby if you get to this gig and it is not what they said, it's not what they said on the box, then they will get you out of there and they will help you find another gig, and they'll put you up if you need to be put up in a place to stay in the interim, knowing that your plans have been completely toppled. So that's that's comforting to know that you've got the organization standing behind you just in case, and that final measure of safety is always appreciated.
Yeah, and you've touched a very interesting thing to trust the inner voice and inner feeling. But how do I know if I can trust it, or how do I know what I'm feeling?
You sound like me. I do this all the time. I regularly I'll get this voice in the back of my head that says something's right or wrong. It could be a relationship, it could be, a travel opportunity, it could be whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, I just heard that voice and it told me it was wrong. Hold on, wait a minute. Maybe that wasn't my instinct. Maybe that was like my self-sabotaging inner voice. Maybe this was me worrying.
Just a fear.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is just fear talking. And I have this horrific inner dialogue where I go back and forth between wondering whether or not that instinct was actually my gut instinct telling me to do something, or whether it was, like you say, fear or something else kicking in. I don't know that I have a good solution for this, except that one of the things that I do practice, and I try to do this more and more, is when I get it could just be, in the daily, doing things, and suddenly a little voice might say, do this instead, or don't eat that, or eat this, or look here. Just the little things, right? But if that little tiny voice kicks in and does that, even if it doesn't really make sense, I'll do it anyway. And because I'm trying to develop the strength of that inner voice and of that instinct. So if I follow the little voices and the little bits of guidance throughout the day, and then I realize that, oh no, that was right, I really needed to do that, or it helped me to go there, do this, say this, whatever it was that I needed to do, then as the more important decisions come up and that voice, expresses itself again, I can recognize it and go, oh yeah, no, this is my, these are my angels. And this is worth following, even if I don't understand why. So it does take a little bit of blind faith, but also practice. If you practice working with your inner voice, then when it really matters, you'll be able to know the difference.
Yeah, and the more you practice, and the more you take your decisions and then look back and evaluate, the more you will be able to understand what was the inner voice and what was the fear or what was something else. So next time it will be just easier to understand what it is that you're feeling.
Yep.
Yes, that's so great. Great stuff. And we would love to hear a little bit more how we can reach out to you. What is your website? And you have a free gift for the listeners as well.
I do indeed. So like I said at the beginning, my online home is theprofessionalhobo.com, but I have a variety.
And we put the link.
Thank you so much.
And we put the link under.
And I have a variety though of I mean, I've got over 800 posts on my website that details not only my journey along the way with my travel narratives and observations, but also I have an extensive section of travel lifestyle guides that really attack the minutia, the things you need to plan or think about or back up, or, you know, all these, how do you get your mail? What do you do with your banking? You know, how do you stay in communication? What cell phone plans to use? All of that. I write about that. Yeah, it's tedious, but it's all stuff that you need to think about if you're planning a long-term travel lifestyle. So I've got an arsenal of content there. I've got financial case studies where I profile the careers and finances of other full-time travelers to show that the travel lifestyle can indeed be financially sustainable, and it can take many different forms. I have a remote work and travel show on YouTube where, again, I speak with ordinary people who have extraordinary remote careers and travel lifestyles. So you can find all of this. I mean, again, like I say, if you want to go to one place, go to theprofessionalhobo.com and you'll find everything else there. But yeah, if you like to watch instead of read, go to YouTube, search for Nora Dunn, you'll find me. And my free gift to everybody is a checklist of 10 crucial things that you must do before you travel long-term. And this will start to help you think about the things that you need to think about if you're planning a long-term trip, and it will help you start to cover your bases. So I highly recommend you get it. It's pretty, it's useful, and it's courtesy of me. And I love to be able to help people to really realize their dreams and to realize that they can do things that they may not formerly have realized they could do, such as travel long-term and work remotely.
Yeah, I love that. And I recommend to get this checklist too, because it will also give sense of safety when you know, like, I've got this 10 things covered and I will be good. Like, I haven't missed anything important. And it is it is essential to feel this safety inside. Then you can actually feel the safety from the inside rather than expecting it from the outside and being dependent on the circumstances.
And, you know, that's a really great observation, because I will say, no matter how you slice it and no matter how well prepared you are, it's going to be scary. You're going to feel nervous. You're launching yourself into the unknown when you travel, even for a short, much less a long period of time. And you are inevitably going to hit a learning curve, and you're inevitably going to make mistakes. And there's, you know, it's going to be difficult and easy and cathartic and everything wrapped up into one. So even if you have everything planned perfectly, it's going to be a challenge. So let's make sure that you actually do have everything planned perfectly to give yourself the best chance of being able to experience the road, you know, without all of the worries of the world on you, and making sure that you're just well positioned to be able to have a really fabulous trip.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in for this interview. I hope you found it educational and inspirational. And again, if you want to learn more about how to get free accommodation around the world, please do check out the link in the description. And you can pick up a copy for less than the price of a cheeseburger to set on your own lifestyle of free accommodation and lifestyle travel. That's it for me. I'm Nora Dunn, otherwise known as the Professional Hobo, and I will catch you next time.